everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me, as always, are my fabulous co-hosts.
Hey, Rob, it's Diana.
And it's me, Jackie.
How y'all doing?
Good.
What up?
It is getting warm. It is getting warm because we are recording in the middle of July.
Hot.
Up here in New England. It's not that bad. Exit hasn't been that bad.
It's been hot.
One of the problems with the recording, a little peek behind the curtain, is we have to turn our fans or AC off. So that makes it hot. Except we have it on right now.
We do.
Diana just pointed out, as I'm bringing this up, Diana just told me she turned it back on. So if you hear a little whoosh in the background, hopefully it makes you feel a little bit cooler. But anyway, this isn't a podcast about central AC or various fan options. This is a podcast about behavior analysis and behavior analytic research. Every week, we choose a topic, find some research articles, and discuss them, just like an old-fashioned journal club. This week, we'll be talking about virtual reality training. Now, you might say, now, Rob, I've been listening to the show for a while, and you already did an episode on virtual reality. That's true. Thank you so much for reminding me. But this episode is not just about the idea of virtual reality and how it can be used. This is specifically an episode about virtual reality training in behavior analytic procedures. So it's a little bit different format in that we're going to have two special guests in our virtual studio. We were very fortunate.
I like what you did there.
What did I do there?
Virtual.
Oh, I just, yeah. Thank you. It was all planned out. We are going to be speaking first with Dr. Berglind Sveinbjornsdottir in Iceland. And then we'll also be talking to, in a separate segment, Dr. Casey Clay from the University of Missouri in the Thompson Center for Autism.
So many doctors.
I know, everyone's a doctor. Everyone's a doctor. Not me, but everyone else is a doctor.
Doctor.
And you might notice, interesting in the audio, it hopefully sounds very good, but in actuality, we had one of our co-hosts, Jackie, was actually in Iceland recording with Berglind at the time and then talking with us remotely. So hopefully that sounds good. It took a while to edit, so I hope you all enjoy it. But we should probably say what articles we'll be discussing, huh?
Yep, let's
do it.
All right. Our first article is by Garland, Vasquez III, and Pearl. It is titled Efficacy of Individualized Clinical Coaching in a Virtual Reality Classroom for Increasing Teachers' Fidelity of Implementation of Discrete Child Training. And that's in Education and Training in Autism and Developmental Disabilities 2012. We will then be talking about Dr. Sveinbjornsdottir's article, which she also wrote with Johannsson, Oddsdottir, Sigurdardottir, Valdimarsson, and Vilhajalmsson, and it's titled Virtual Discrete Trial Training for Teacher Trainees, and that was published recently in the Journal on Multimodal User Interfaces, and just in 2019. And in talking to Dr. Casey Clay, he has not published his results. However, he does give us a great in-depth sort of preview of what some of those results on his research might look like.
Yeah, that's like a sneak peek one.
It's a sneak peek. It's very exciting. So, without any further ado, let's cut over to our interview with Dr. Berglind Sveinbjornsdottir. All right, so we are here talking to Dr. Berglind Sveinbjornsdottir, or daughter, as I was told. I was allowed to pronounce it as an American in my great Icelandic pronunciation. Berglind, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm really sorry that only Diana and I could be here in America to talk to you all the way over in Iceland. I don't know what happened to Jackie. I don't know where she is.
Wait, I'm here too.
What?
I'm in Iceland with Berglind.
No way! This is our first international cast.
It is.
Yeah, it's our first international.
I'm honored.
You should be honored.
I'm honored. And Iceland is proud.
Iceland is proud.
So we have you guys reporting in from our ABA Inside Track Iceland studio.
It's a very amazing studio. Pretty much similar to the studio in the States.
We have some Legos.
Some Legos, a Nerf ball, a soccer ball. So it's pretty equal. I feel at home.
Good.
Good.
Not too different.
That's important. So, Berglind, we so appreciate your taking time out of your day to talk to us all the way in Iceland about your research related to virtual discrete trial training. But before we get into your article, why don't you tell the listeners all about you?
I was born in Iceland, obviously, when I was 5. No, I'm joking. So I studied behavior analysis in Northeastern University.
With me.
With Jackie. I moved to Boston in 2007, and I was a grad assistant at the New England Center for Children. The reason why I got into that was because I worked in Iceland in early intervention. Atle, who worked at NAC, he pointed me out that I could go there and get my degree and work, etc. So I moved there and graduated in 2010. And then I continued into the PhD program and the Western New England doctorate program. And then I moved back in 2015 or 16. Yeah, 16.
Yeah, 16.
Yeah.
Because I was very sad when you moved back.
Yeah. There's a lot of crying.
There was a lot of crying.
Yeah.
From both of us. It wasn't just me.
So yeah, that's kind of the story. Yeah.
I know.
Yes.
She's like, I splashed water on my face when Jackie came around.
So yeah, well, I mean, I guess that's kind of my educational story. So, and then now I live in Iceland and I work at the University of Reykjavik, or Reykjavik University. I teach in psychology department. And yeah, live in the city.
She's really living the life. Her apartment's so pretty.
And then the research that we're going to talk about today, was that part of your dissertation?
Nope. Actually, not related to anything I've done before. So my dissertation was on transitions or rich to lean schedules.
Good topic too.
Yeah. This was kind of a...
For fun.
Yeah.
How did you think of this topic? Like, where was the beginning? Were you just sitting at your desk one day drinking like a cafe?
Yeah.
And you said, ho, virtual reality. That's my cup of coffee.
Yep. That's exactly what happened.
No, what happened?
So I was walking around with my Vikings and no, I'm joking.
I was like, what?
So I taught a class an undergrad class. I was teaching students like discrete trial training and all the skills they need to like an early intervention in preschool. So we have that in Iceland, but we don't have a lot of professionals that know these skills.
Okay.
So I was going to send some students to preschool with these skills and teach the kids and, etc. And that was kind of when I had recently moved. And I was lucky enough, obviously, to work at NAC where there's so many skilled professionals. So I kind of had forgotten about how things were at home. So I started teaching and I was like, wait, so who's gonna train them? And who's gonna supervise them? Who's gonna observe them? And that's me.
Right. There you go. You and all of the preschools. There's like 6?
Not all the students.
All the students, yeah.
And I was like, well, I can't spend all the in-class time on training this one skill because we had to go over other things.
Right.
And I also had talked to my colleague and she was saying that the toughest thing in her work was that she didn't have enough time to supervise the students. And she is the only BCBA where she works. That's kind of how it started, that I was like, well, needs to be some other efficient way to train people.
Sure.
Specifically, I was thinking about behavior skills training.
Right.
So I know that at least here, like, you're supposed to learn a lot of skills just by reading or listening to a lecture.
Sure.
And that's how that's what they do here, I guess.
Didactic training.
Yes. Right. And I guess, it's understandably, I teach sometimes like that. So it's just more, So I was thinking more in terms of, I really wanted them to do that, rehearse, feedback, etc. But I needed more people to give the feedback, like on the floor, etc.
That's just not going to be you? You can't clone yourself into multiple Berglinds?
Not anymore.
Yeah. You could at one point, but now your body's a little too old. Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of how it started. And then at RU, we have a pretty strong department of computer science.
Cool.
And one of my colleagues there, his name is Hannes Högni Vilhajalmsson. And
that's his name.
He worked at MIT.
Oh.
And he has been collaborating with people from Department of Psychology because VR is used with phobias a lot.
Sure.
So they make up an environment, with spiders and then with desensitization.
We did that. I think we read an article all about spider phobia and VR.
Yeah.
We did a previous episode for our listeners, we did a previous episode on virtual reality, episode 25. And most of the research that we found then was actually from like the early 2000s, and most of it was focused on desensitization and then a few teaching skills, but nothing like what you found to have worked on.
There was a
really
fire
cool.
safety one.
Fire safety, yeah. And then I found one on crossing the road. I think for kids with autism.
I happen to know that citation off the top of your head, because that is a problem that I've seen, and all I've ever come up with was, I guess you could find a cul-de-sac and sort of have a Confederate drive around in circles over and over to teach cross, don't cross. But no one ever does that when I suggest it. They're like, we're not going to do that.
I'll try to find. Yeah, I'll try to find it. I think it was even with kids with autism. So
neat.
But Hannes is really keen on collaborating, especially with psychology department, because what I found is that people in computer science are working with a lot of similar. I don't know. We have similar interests.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah,
and especially in virtual reality, because they're trying to make lifelike situations, the training skills. So it started off, they trained people in the army and safety skills. I knew about that, and we started chatting, and just when we're getting coffee, because it's a small university.
It's always about the coffee.
It's all about the coffee.
It sure is.
And I asked him, like, would something like this be possible? And I wasn't even thinking about discrete trial training, but I was thinking about really like an easy task to make. I mean, I obviously didn't know how easy it was, but like, preference assessment or something that had like really discrete steps.
Right.
And that's kind of how it started.
That's so fun. That's like an awesome interdisciplinary research, which everyone loves.
Yep.
And wants people to do.
Yep. And it's been great. And that's been a really good collaboration.
Awesome. So how did he feel about discrete trial training?
So, I mean, he didn't feel anything about it.
Oh, good. I mean, that's fine, right? But I wondered, he's like, this is how you teach people?
Yeah. I mean, no, I think... So we got a grant, there's a student innovation grant.
Nice.
So students can work on research over the summer.
Sure.
So we got that one summer. So he had 2 students of his working in this project over the summer. So basically our collaboration was that I made up, I told them what I needed and what the steps were, and then they set up the environment. And
that's awesome.
All the stuff in the environment. So no, there was never any discussion about, no, this is weird or anything, but it was more about just communicating exactly what I wanted, and them also telling me what was possible to do or how I could, communicate it better, probably.
Yeah.
But they were like best students. I mean, they were just so fast as doing things.
Wow.
And just really hardworking. I don't know. I've just never worked with a field like, I don't know. It's just the things they can create is amazing, I thought. So
that's great. This is one of my favorite types of research too, is where you have other people that can help you and do a lot of the work, right? In the front. Where you're like, this is what I really want you to do, and they're like, I'm gonna do it, and they do it fast.
Well, yeah, and they were just really hardworking. So
that's great.
I like that.
And did you expect that, Berglind, that you know what, there's a great idea for a study. I know behavior skills training works. I know how to teach discrete trial training. If we can just get over the hump of creating the video game virtual reality environment, this is going to go great. Or were you worried that the skill might not generalize?
Oh, you mean generalize after they've been in the environment?
Yeah, you assume it would work because it looks the same, except it's the virtual realm, and then it just doesn't. No one learns it for some reason. Were you worried about that at all?
No, I mean, because I had already been in an environment like this. They showed me especially with the spiders, and they showed me an environment where I had to walk over like a plank, and there was Grand Canyon beneath me, to test for being afraid of heights or something. And no, because I experienced I was scared. And
you had a real situation.
Yeah, situation.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, wow, you can actually make things lifelike. But also what I was just interested in, that you have to behave in a virtual reality environment.
You do.
So previous studies have done a lot of computer training where you sit in front of a computer and you might have to interact. But in a virtual reality environment, you have the goggles on you, but you might have to move, and you're moving your arms. And that's kind of what I liked about it, that you actually have to emit a behavior and practice the skills. So I wasn't really worried about it. It was more about how complex it would be to create the environment. And we're still working on it, because there's some things that we have to make more fluent. And the child, for example, how the child can be more like a real kid. But I don't know, like you could like look under the table and the kid was swinging his leg. Like they didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
It was just like, it was, and then you can hear like kids playing outside, because it was supposed to be a school.
Oh, that's clever.
But they think about those things a lot. Like, yeah, it was fun.
That's the thing I think with virtual reality is I think everyone sort of understands generally what virtual reality might actually be or what it isn't from either movies or maybe virtual reality from like the 90s. But until you wear some of these modern headsets, you don't realize how much you do feel that you are in another place, because there is that sense of, I can look under things. I'm going to go somewhere I'm not supposed to be and it's still there.
Yeah. You turn around. Yeah. And after that, it's like so many opportunity. Like I was like, oh my god, we can do this and this, and we started a project with teaching social skills.
Neat.
For kids with autism. So that's what they're working on now, like putting up a program where the kids can actually practice the skills, because sometimes it's hard to set the skills up in a regular school environment. And some of these kids are really used to this computer world. Interacting in a computer environment.
So who are your participants?
So in the study, the participants were teachers at a school here for children with disabilities.
Were they the teachers or were they like the paraprofessionals? You call them something different, but...
Yeah, but they're teachers. I mean, teacher for the children, yeah.
Yep.
But they had never experienced discrete trial training.
Okay.
But they were going to do it. So there was a BCBA there was implementing discrete trial training.
Awesome.
And with the form, taking data, all the prompting, fading of prompts and all that.
So they were like all in.
I mean, they were all in doing it with the kids,
right.
But they were kind of, obviously, I've never done research with typically developing adults.
Yeah.
So doing baseline, for example, that was really hard for them.
Yeah.
Doing something they were not good at. And we couldn't say anything. So that was pretty...
They probably were like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right?
Yeah,
am I doing it right?
We said, like, if you don't want to do anymore, you just say, I don't want to do it.
Right.
So that would just be discontinued.
Sure.
And all of them did that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
They kept looking at you like, why are you setting me up to fail?
Yeah, it's a really horrible situation.
Yeah, it is.
Us coming in, we're going to teach you a skill, but first, you're going to suck at it.
And we're going to watch you.
Yeah, we're going to watch you and not say anything. I don't know, yeah.
They got a sheet, though, didn't they? Weren't they allowed to read a sheet?
So, so that was the baseline. So they had the sheet. It was a data sheet with... So if you would know, we could probably read it, and then you... We're supposed to like implement discrete trial training. So they had the sheet where they said what step the child would be on, what prompt they should use, what the SD was, what order of the stimuli would be, and then what the reinforcer would be.
Nice.
And we know from previous research that has not proven to be enough for most people to learn discrete trial training.
Right, yeah. And I think like the supervisor was working there, she said like the most common mistakes she saw that people did was, for example, taking data before delivering the reinforcer,
Right.
That one's not maybe make or break, but it's still not best practice.
Right, yeah.
And so then what happened next? So you have your participants, you took baseline, they were mad at you.
Yep, and then the end.
Yeah, and they were like, I'm out.
And then the supervisor there, she usually has a lecture. That's how they teach discrete trial training.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lecture, or not a lecture, like a lecture demonstrating
like a workshop,
the skill. Yeah, workshop kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So they all went to that. It's an hour long where they have demonstrations and they went through the skills. And then after that, they came and tried the environment.
Great. Tried the real environment or the virtual reality?
The virtual reality environment. Okay.
Cool.
But after each, so after the they did the baseline, then after the lecture, they tried the skill again with us.
Right.
And then after the VR, they tried the skill again with us. Yeah.
How'd they do after the lecture?
Some improvement, but none of them went to above, I think, 70%.
All right. We know that's not the greatest, right? When you're trying to teach a skill.
It was like, and then nothing happened. Yeah.
My favorite part, Berglind, was that the only thing that everyone mastered 100%
was so we had the one step was looking at the data sheet, and basically, because I think that's also one thing we maybe are kind of new at, people aren't that used to using data sheets
Right.
when working with kids, So that was something they might have not done before, like
Sure.
taking data or, so.
Even looking down at something, it's just, okay, I'm going to teach this letter.
Yeah.
Right. So here's how I do it.
Right.
I don't have to look at anything because I know the letter A. Right.
So.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I think the lecture was sufficient at.
Right, to check the data sheet, see, because they knew that had some good information.
That's funny. Yeah. You're like, plus.
Yes.
So they didn't do great at the lecture after they saw a little bit of improvement, but not where we'd want to see them.
Mm-hmm.
And then how many times did they participate in the virtual reality sessions?
So they did 9 trials.
9 trials, all in a row?
A session, yeah. So they did a session, and then they went and tested it with us.
With you guys or with kids?
With us. So we were just with us, no kids. And that's something we want to do next, is obviously look at if these skills actually generalize or maintain when they go and work with the kids. So they tested it with us.
How'd they do?
Well, really well.
Good.
Yeah. They were like, oh yeah, that's what I was supposed to do. Oh, this is what okay. So, and that's also the fun thing, they're pretty vocal about these things, and there was a lot of verbal happening when they were doing this. Oh yeah, this. Oh yeah, that's the prompt.
Were they saying those things in English?
Yes.
That's so neat. And did everyone reach mastery criteria?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Berglind, could you describe for the listeners sort of what the general VR setup is? There's a great picture, I think, of, I don't think it was one of the subjects, but in the article of what the setup kind of looked like. But just for folks who don't have it in front of them or who have never done VR with the it was Oculus Rift headset, what that looked like, what the training looked like.
So you get goggles, so it's headset that you put over your eyes, obviously. Then you have controllers in both of your hands, and those are actually your hands. So they can sense all the movements of your hands, because you had actually had to go and grab the items to move them around. You had to get the data sheet, etc. And then you sat in front of a computer just because that's where the program was at. But the environment actually is you can see everything in the goggles. So if you stood up, the environment would still be there. You could be standing, but we just had them sitting, so it would just be like they were sitting at the table in front of the student.
Right. That seems interesting.
See, I know you mentioned you could look under the table, you could look around the room. Could they see the data sheet? Was there enough resolution that? Oh wow.
Yeah.
So they had to click. They had to push on it, and then they would get bigger in front of them. Like in
a video game where you click on the item and they're like, "Here's the clue you found in your mystery video game." Okay.
And that was something we also had to train them in, is how to do things in the virtual environment, and that's something I didn't play a lot of computer games, and so
me neither.
Is a totally new thing for me. And you had to push a certain button to grab things, and then go. So that's something we had to practice themselves in.
And was there a window in this room?
In the virtual, yes.
Oh, good. Because you should not be teaching skills if there's not a window.
True.
Even in virtual reality.
True.
You could hear the kids playing outside.
Yeah, you heard them playing outside.
Participants in the study, they weren't particularly young. Am I recalling that correctly?
The teachers? Well, no, they were adults.
Are you thinking they were in their 50s?
No, I think they were 20s to 40s.
Yeah.
Therefore, right? I can see if it were just, Gen X teachers, then perhaps they would pick up on this really easily and wouldn't need a lot of training.
We asked them. Some had tried it, so I don't know, I don't have one of those goggles, but some people have them on their phones and stuff. You play games.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you can.
I bought one for it was $15, and it's just a piece of cardboard with special glass, and you just jam your phone in there, and it does a pretty good job of capturing. It's not as good as I think the headset you had in the study, but if you just wanted to get a general sense of it, it was okay.
Right. And I think some people have it on their Wii, games. So, but one person had played, had used it before, but the other ones hadn't really, experienced using virtual reality. So they all thought it was a fun experience, and they were all excited about it, and they all liked it. The only problem was one of the participants had glasses, so it was kind of harder to keep the goggles on, comfortably. And then another thing that they always test for is motion sickness. So that's something that happens for some people when you're in the environment, that you get motion sickness. It's because I think everything is moving around, but you're not really moving.
Right.
Yeah. But they didn't experience anything like that, probably just because they're sitting.
Right.
But people do sometimes feel some discomfort.
I get that when I'm watching an IMAX 3D film.
Oh, okay.
I can't watch them. It makes me feel nauseous. So I wonder if VR wouldn't work for me.
Could be.
The newer models are supposed to be better.
Oh.
Okay.
It's the refresh. Yeah. It's how fast it refreshes when you move your head. Because if you
okay.
I mean, I think in here you had it cranked up. They try to go 80 frames a second.
Cranked up.
Because the problem is when you turn your head, if the headset or computer or whatever is creating the world slower than your brain thinks it should be, you get that feeling of, oh God, I've just moved and the world around me has not moved. That's not right. I'm going to vomit now.
That's good.
Yeah.
No horrible side effects.
Didn't you see that in the study? No one vomited.
And you were doing basically behavioral skills training, and you were just doing the feedback through their headset, or just you were actually talking to them?
No, on the screen. I screamed.
You're like,
wrong!
You're doing it wrong! And slap their hands through the virtual reality.
No. So on the screen it would pop up so if they, let's say, didn't put the stimuli in the right order, it was pop up a bubble saying, oh, wrong order or something.
And then they could fix it?
Yeah. Or if they didn't check the data sheet, they would pop up saying, oh, you forgot step 1 or something like that.
Nice. So they knew where the eye tracking, when your head moved down to look at the data sheet?
But you have to click on it.
Right.
So that's how.
The differing observing response. Yeah. That's smart. Yeah.
But we couldn't give feedback, for example. So they were giving the SD, for example, so 0.2 or
right.
So then I had to give that feedback.
Oh, because you couldn't right. build that in.
But it's possible to have a voice. So that's something they're making in the computer science department is a voice. I don't know if they call it voice recognition or something, but you can use it with language and talking.
Wow.
Because that would make it a fully functioning, almost video game of the training. Because then if you say something and it's the wrong thing, the computer would know to kick back the feedback message. Or the student would know to react a certain way. You could,
It's that, there's so many. Now that's now it's just getting more, I think. Now things are going slower, I think.
Right.
Just because those are the fine-tuning things that I think might be more complex. Or,
right. That seems hard. Seems hard to do.
I thought Iceland, don't you guys have a huge video game development company in Iceland, right? And they make one of the online games, don't they?
Yeah, it's Eve Online.
You should see if they want to help you create a really good training video game.
We should, yeah. And I think, this department, they're pretty, they're really good. I was just amazed how fast they're doing things, and the students, and obviously the professor. So
nice. So where do you think you're going to go next?
We're going to continue with this one project just to make sure. I want to make sure they can do. So we didn't include all the necessary steps that you have to do when you do discrete trial training. So we just had the basic steps.
Sure.
But we're going to include all the steps. And then what we want to do is do something with the student.
Okay.
So that's something they're interested in, and is making I think they call it the avatar, or make him behave.
Oh,
so,
right.
Make him do something, or we might make him be a little bit non-compliant, or we might have to teach the teacher to do session behavior,
nice.
Stuff like that. Also, we wanted them. What we want to do is make a couple of levels. So maybe first train the teachers the basic skills, and then maybe the next level the student will start making mistakes, so they have to do error correction. So make it a little maybe level-based training.
Right. Oh, then they could earn badges.
Right, so it could be,
you could gamify your VR.
Yeah.
Whenever we practice these types of skills, or when I've done it in the past with in vivo training, we do exactly those levels, right? First, you just practice with a partner that's perfectly compliant and gets it right every time. Then you practice with a partner who makes an error, and then you practice with a partner who is somehow not behaving quite right. And you have to work on attending or reinforce their assessment or something.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think we do have pretty good, we know how people learn,
right?
And we have pretty good ways to teach them. We just don't have the resources here. you know.
Yeah.
So it's just, that's kind of what I was thinking. We just don't have maybe the people. We have the technology, so that might be a good way for other places that don't have resources.
Have any of the programmers talked about whether some of the newer virtual reality headsets that don't require a computer, whether this software would run on those? Because I know there's a new one out now. It's like $400-$500, and you don't need a computer. It's fully self-sufficient, but it's just not going to be as powerful.
Right. Yeah. No, we haven't really discussed it, but I think the idea was for them to be able to do it like at the school, not have to come to like the lab.
Right. That would make sense.
Yeah, but that would obviously be, it wouldn't be a nice program if they always had to come to the university, and, it would have to kind of be able to run out of the school where they're at or where they have to be trained.
I mean, I would love to see kind of version 2, version 3, where you add in the virtual avatar student behaviors that go by the levels. I don't know whether it would cheapen the experience if it had some of the other things you put in gamification, like points or a leaderboard. I mean, I'd be curious. I mean, I guess if everyone in this study learned the skills to mastery, you can't get much better than that. So I guess it would depend on how they do with their generalization to real performance, or how they do when the task gets more complicated, when you start throwing in all the variations to how the student could respond, then maybe you would need something like that. But if everyone just gets to 100%, well, okay, that's good. There's not much higher to go.
If this is sufficient for people to like acquire the skill when they go on the floor,
Right.
I think this would be great. For example, if we want to train staff in doing some difficult procedures, like maybe they're likely to avoid,
Right.
So because it's used for phobias and, with the negative reinforcement, or if you want to train parents of
Anything,
with
right?
problem
Yeah.
behavior or anything like that. So I think that's something I'd be interested in seeing.
Yeah.
And I think Casey, it was Casey Clay. He was doing at the symposium in Chicago. He was training staff of implementing FCT.
Right. Yeah.
He actually showed that to us. We met him we got up together at the Thompson Center for Autism in St. Louis, and he let me see his Oculus Go, and he let me see this little student, and he's tantruming, and you have to wait till the student's not tantruming, and you give him and he hands you the FCT card, and then you can kind of shake him on the head.
That was really cool.
It was really cool. He also had one part of it where he was in Stranger Things, and you were in like the living room of the Netflix. It's a show on Netflix called Stranger Things in your living room. And I actually...
That was just you playing a video game.
Yeah, I don't play video games ever, like legitimately never. And I was in it, and I actually screamed out loud when the monster came into the room. We were in a restaurant. I screamed out loud and knocked over a drink onto the floor.
But that's what I did in the VR environment.
Right.
I was supposed to walk over the canyon. I'm in the school. I have goggles. I'm not walking over this canyon.
Right? You're like, no thanks.
But it was super hard.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of potential for using VR across a lot of different environments. And if you can use it systematically, right? I like your levels thing. Yeah. And I like that it could be a supplement to like your initial training, right? So you have initial training with staff, and then you could just bring staff in when they have like free time to play this game, right? That they could be learning, and it might be more fun and more likely that they're going to learn something because it's in this different medium versus just listening to you. I mean, you're amazing, but
I would never choose it above.
Yeah.
I think your point, Berglind, about it's not just modeling something for someone else, but the entire experience is consequence-based, right?
Right.
Yeah. You have to act. You have to engage in behavior, and then you receive feedback based on your actual actions versus just watching someone else do it or like kind of practicing with someone. And, it's not always the same when you just role play and you both know that it's not really going to happen.
Yeah.
You really have to respond here, and I don't think I didn't do the one that Rob was talking about, but it seems really immersive based on what everyone has said, and it would be the closest that you could get to doing a real role play with a student that you can without actually having the student there. So I think that there could be so many applications for this, particularly for individuals who don't have access to the types of training resources that we're talking about. And I think that the point that you brought up in this article was really good too. And it was in the other article that we have for today as well, the Garland one too, is that some teachers who are in training had concerns about not providing instruction that was up to par for the students who were going to be accompanying them during their training period. And I think that that's sort of a really important ethical point as well, that if we're not fully up to speed in training the teachers, then is it an appropriate use of students' time to be with a teacher who isn't ready to actually teach them?
Yeah, definitely. And, making mistakes with the students and all that. I really like this, being able to use this technology. And I think one of the most common questions that I got when I presented this or as poster or a symposium were people like, how did you make the program? How did you get the collaboration started?
Right.
And I think that's something that people were most thought was the hardest. And that was kind of the easiest.
Right.
And
you guys have coffee here. I'm just kidding.
We just chat more. Or it was just but I think that was not the hardest part.
Right.
So I think at any university, if there's a department that has, a computer science department or, at least them, they were super excited having this collaboration.
We had a similar experience the other weekend, Rob, where we went to this technology fair that one of the local colleges puts on, and they had folks there. I don't actually know what department they were from, but they were students who had been doing work with the 3D printers, and they were just looking for projects. So they had some of their supervisors there to just get new ideas about anything that people might need. And their example that they had brought was someone had brought to them the problem of older adults who were eating too quickly and had potential aspiration on their food. So they made this little cereal bowl size bowl that had 5 different stalactites that were 3D printed into the bottom of the bowl. And by putting those in there, when you scooped the food, you couldn't scoop a very big bite of it. It had to be kind of small. So it was just a really neat and easy modification that they made. But they're like, we have all these students who need projects. And we told them, the population that we're familiar with. And he was like, let us know if you have anything or think of anything that you might need, right? So I can see how the computer science department, they might also have other people who need projects and need people who have ideas that would actually be socially significant and useful.
Yeah. And I've supervised or co-supervised another project. And those have been just, students in the computer science department, and they might have worked, in early intervention or something and had an idea.
Yeah.
And now Hannes connects me with them. I think that's also because I think us connecting to that kind of field, because there's so many, I don't know, we were always, when I was working at NAC, we were always talking about toys too. Sometimes kids always just do the same thing on a toy.
Right. Yeah.
So we're what if we could program that you can never do the same thing again or something, and that's probably super simple. And maybe someone has done it,
Right. Or when you pull up kids learning apps and you're like, oh, this will be a good app. But then knowing our background, you can see well, actually they made the letter the same color as the rest of the words. So the kids don't need to actually discriminate the letter. They can just match by color. Right. So having people who understand sort of our background on stimulus discrimination and stimulus control would be beneficial for programming.
And that's actually an app. So that was the other project I was involved with. And he was teaching students because he had tried discrete trial training. He was like, oh, that's super cool. Could we do that with kids in school? I was like, yes, of course, And he taught them, he was comparing prompting with no prompting, just
cool.
on an iPad. And we also did errorless learning.
Okay.
So they were discriminating types of birds, complex stimuli, so types of birds and types of flowers, and then I think he had viruses or something.
Oh, geez.
And the kids loved it. They were like, yeah, me, I want to go out and play on the computer game. And they were just discriminating between, I don't know what type of birds it were.
Pretty complex birds, yeah.
Icelandic birds.
That spring bird that everyone loves.
Yeah. And then, he had errors learning, and then compared that with making mistakes, because a lot of the computer games, I think sometimes are just wrong,
right.
Try again or something. So yeah, that went really well. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I think this technology just seems like it answers a lot of the questions that get raised when you read any study on BST going, it's amazing, it's the best, it's the quickest way to teach, however, limitations. And being able to really twist these technologies into ways that will get over a lot of those barriers is so promising. I mean, I'm even thinking about like adding in some sort of like a personalized system of instruction component. So it's just, here you go, sit down, you're on level 1, and then based on their performance, the game itself or the program itself can just keep adding on layers until they, you know, quote unquote, win the game. And their prize is, you know, you get a job, here you go, go work with kids.
Yeah. You have a job.
First one.
Oh, it'll be like that movie. Do you guys remember that movie from the 80s? The Last Starfighter, where the kid was so good at video games that he got to fight an intergalactic war?
Nope.
Okay, it's like that.
I didn't watch movies as a young person.
Didn't make it to Iceland.
Yeah.
It'll be the new hot video game. It'll be the new hot video game, Discrete Trial Trainer. And then whoever gets really good at it, it's like, oh, great job. You have a career as a registered behavior technician now. You did it.
That's awesome.
Your dreams have come true.
Berglind, could I just really quickly ask you, the other study you discussed, you sent us, the Garland, Vasquez, and Pearl, they talked about using virtual reality as well. However, in reading their article, I didn't feel like it was the same virtual reality, their virtual classroom. I didn't think that was at all like the virtual reality that you were doing.
Right. So there, it's interactive. They're still watching a screen, basically. So they're not immersed in the environment, but they're just watching a screen, but they can actually interact with like the child on the screen.
Okay.
Oh, so more like video modeling meets a smart board, maybe?
Kind of, yeah. But that's the same. I asked, Hannes, because they talk about like virtual reality. So I was like, well, how is ours different? And then he said, well, yeah, I think he called it like a computerized interactive program.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I like yours better though. Not to knock the other guys.
Garland? No.
Yeah.
That seemed very proprietary. Like you have to go to their lab where they have this elaborate setup, as opposed to virtual reality in your study, which was you could buy that.
Right.
You just need the software. You could buy a computer. You could buy the headset.
Right. Well, and this one came out in 2012, so the research was done, probably close to a decade. The Garland one, and things are just changing so rapidly. Yeah. Exciting to think what the frontier, though the future might hold for this technology, because it's becoming more and more readily available.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting cheaper, more accessible for everyone.
Nice.
Does seem technology plus behavioral skills training components equals mastery. Does kind of seem to be the thread throughout.
Oh my gosh, that is like a live, laugh, love. That's like a live, laugh, love thing that we can put on our wall. Yeah. Behavioral skills training plus virtual reality equals mastery. I'll start making them and we'll sell them on our merch page. Along with
like that big calligraphy writing.
Along with our Christmas album.
Oh, we gotta work on that.
Ethics handbooks.
Trucker hats. We have so many things to work on. I mean, this should take top priority, though.
We'll get our ABA Inside Track branded virtual reality headsets. But these are the best ones to train discrete trial training with, because our logo's on the side somehow.
That's awesome.
It's magic. Well, Berglind, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to go over this article with us. This research sounds so exciting. I really would like to do virtual reality research, mostly just so I could get a virtual reality headset to play with when it wasn't being used.
Well,
of course, Rob.
Welcome to Reykjavik University in Iceland. Anytime. Everyone is welcome.
I was telling Diana I needed to go buy one of the $400 ones just to make sure it was all tested out.
I did not fall for it.
No, it didn't work. I'll bring it to my school district. If you'll send the software once it's all finished.
I'll send it. Yes.
Then I can write that off on my taxes.
Yes, definitely.
Then I'll play the Star Wars ones when the games when they're not in use. There we go.
Maybe I can make that kind of characters within.
Oh yeah.
You could discrete trial train Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Now we're talking.
I'll write that down.
That was not the match you were looking for.
All right, well, Berglind, thank you so much. Jackie, we hope to see you soon back in our original studio as opposed to our satellite studio. One of our many international studios I'm sure we have.
I'm not sure I'm coming back, guys. I'm just saying.
Oh, Berglind, what's the best food to get in Iceland if you're an Icelandic traveler? Or a non-Icelandic traveler, I should say.
American style.
That's awesome. A burger and fries.
Burger and fries.
Pizza. That's what I've eaten.
I would do like fish.
Yeah, fish is pretty prevalent here. I had fish jerky the other day.
I
had fish jerky on a hike. It was delicious. Thank you, Atli.
And she tried water.
I tried some water.
In the mountain.
I drank from a stream in the water. Mm-hmm. Although the whole time I thought that I was going to get beaver fever, because that's what happens in the United States. You can't just drink the water outside. You can't get it here. Nope.
We don't have
They don't have beavers.
We don't have any animals. Like, we have sheeps. But yeah, I would say fish.
Fish.
That's something you should, lamb.
There's a lot of lamb.
There's a lot of
I
lamb.
didn't try any lamb.
No.
I saw some lamb in the wild, but I didn't eat them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hot springs.
So, Jackie, do you get to do any sightseeing? You guys going to do any like fun trips, or Berglind show you some sights while you're there?
Yeah, no. We on Friday. So I'm here for fun and business. On Friday we saw our school. It's called. Yeah, it was really awesome, and we learned about services in Iceland from our colleague Atli and Berglind. And then yesterday, Atli took me and my colleague on a 7-mile hike into the wilderness. A bunch of very steep hill that may have been considered a mountain in our sneakers, which was awesome. And so we slid down on our bums, and we saw a hot spring, which was too hot to put my feet in, and some bubbling stuff. And then we saw some waterfalls and a geyser. We went to the national park. We saw a crater. Yesterday was very busy, and then we were super tired. I got sunburned in Iceland.
Aren't you up more north? So wouldn't it be more likely to get sunburned, or is it less likely? I don't know how that works.
Yeah, it's probably more likely. There's just never sun here usually. So, and today we just hung around. We went to the flea market in the city center. We went shopping. We had some lunch. Mm-hmm. Yeah, today we were low key, and now it's gonna be work all week.
Oh, that's less fun.
Yeah.
Oh well, but kind of fun.
Yeah, work all week, and then we're going to the Blue Lagoon on Saturday. And if you go to the Blue Lagoon website, I'm gonna be just like that girl that's in the front of the website. She like slowly turns to face the camera. That's
with
gonna
be toothpaste.
Yeah,
on her face.
She's like, that's gonna be me.
All right, you gonna put that on Instagram for everyone?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, good. So everyone can see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna let you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was so fun
talking to you.
Bye.
Well, we hope you enjoyed our first segment. Before we go into our next segment, I want to make sure that all of you out there listening know that ABA Inside Track is ACE approved. By listening to the show, you can apply for continuing education credits. You just need to listen to the show and then apply on our website, abainsidetrack.com/get-CEUs. Now you're going to need to know 2 secret code words that we've hidden throughout the episode. We're going to give you the first one right now. It is koala. Koala. Koala, the marsupial animal found on Australia. They eat eucalyptus leaves. They're adorable, but they have claws. I think they might attack you if you're too close to them. I don't know that though.
Hi, mate.
Yeah,
my koala.
That's how they talk. Just like that. They have a boomerang and drink Foster's beer and other Australian stereotypes. Koala. Why don't we take a little break and then come back with our second interview? We'll be right back.
Do you want to be a BCBA?
Sure, we all do.
Now you can come to Regis College in Weston, Mass. to get your graduate degree.
Choose from any one of these courses.
Masters of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis.
Masters of Science in Special Education.
Dual degree in Special Ed and ABA.
Or be eligible for your postmaster's certificate.
You can complete your degree and be ready to sit for the exam in 2 years. And our 2017 grads had a 100% pass rate on the BACB exam.
Come enjoy practicum placement support, ethics mini handbooks, PhD-level professors, small class sizes, and a service trip to Iceland.
If interested, don't delay. Supplies are limited. Learn more at regiscollege.edu.
Again, that's www.regiscollege.edu, regiscollege.edu. One more time, www.regiscollege.edu. See you there!
And we are back talking about virtual reality training with our special guests, Dr. Berglind, Sveinbjornsdottir, and Dr. Casey Clay. So you already heard our first interview, so now we're going to go into our second recorded interview with Dr. Casey Clay. Is everybody ready?
I am. I'm ready.
I got the goggles on.
Okay. It's not a virtual reality interview, of course. All right, here we go. So we are back talking more about virtual reality training, and we have another very special guest joining us in the virtual studio. It's Dr. Casey Clay. Casey, how are you doing?
Doing well, Rob. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. I'm very excited for everyone, especially if they missed our bonus episode from the Thompson Center Conference, to get a chance to hear all about the work you're doing with virtual reality training. Because I know when I got to play around with it for a few minutes with your Oculus setup, I thought it was one of the coolest trainings I'd ever done. So I'm really, really happy that other people, if they missed that episode, are going to get to hear all about that work.
Yeah, appreciate your interest and enthusiasm, and glad to share.
Yeah, Rob basically has not stopped talking about that.
He literally has not, even to me, and I don't live here.
Oh, Casey, at the time, I can't remember because we got a virtual reality headset for our PlayStation. I can't remember if I had it at the time when I was playing around with yours, but I've had a chance to play around with some virtual reality. Not training. I think I played a game where I was a mouse knight on an adventure. So very different, I think, than anything having to do with behavior analysis. But it really reinvigorated my interest in virtual reality as a means of everything, I think, going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, the games can be pretty enthralling. I haven't actually jumped in and played a lot of games. I've done more of the simulation type stuff. I can see how it could be entertaining as well as, useful for training.
Mm-hmm. So before we get into your work, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
So I am an assistant professor at the University of Missouri, and I'm the director of Applied Behavior Intervention Services at the Thompson Center for Autism here in Columbia, Missouri. I've been out here about 4 years now. As we're going to talk about, some of my research interests are in training, working in reduction of severe problem behavior, and, some functional communication training and ways to train more efficiently, basically.
Is that sort of how you came about to the idea of virtual reality as a possible means of improving your trainings or of improving trainings?
Yeah, well, so I've been involved I'm involved in training of master's students out here. We have the master's program at the University of Missouri. And so I do a lot of practicum supervision and training, master's level students, how to work with clients with autism, with severe problem behavior. So I've done a lot of training sort of applied in the clinic setting. And I also have some previous research that I've been involved with on training, more training assessment and not necessarily training intervention. I'm day to day working on training, and, I've noticed with master students, we can do a lot of in vivo training, but sometimes you can get them to mastery, but then you throw them in the setting with the kid and they sort of either forget everything you just told them, or, being right there is just too nerve-wracking and the skills aren't transferring as well as I would hope.
Mm-hmm. And is that something that you are concerned about from, say, the ethical standpoint of having students who you feel are not as well equipped as you would like them to be to work with the students? I know that's come up a lot in the research, but again, it almost feels like one of those unfair statements of like, you're not allowed to have people work with clients until they've mastered a skill, but they can't master the skill until they've worked with the client. It seems like one of those weird ethical catch-22s. Is that a problem that you feel you run into, or they're good enough, they just aren't as good as they should be, or you'd like them to be?
Yeah, exactly. That idea is sort of paradoxical. We do the training, and we're using behavioral skills training. We train them to mastery, and then it's never really just kind of throw them in there. But even
good luck.
A couple sessions, and it seems like once they are on the floor, with that kid that might engage in some real severe aggression or some pretty serious self-injury, that can be sort of startling, and that's hard to recreate when you're doing your role play with them.
And I know that I have done a lot of role play situations and these types of situations, and it's hard for people to take it seriously, right? Because like if you're acting in an aggressive manner, there's so much giggling.
I get to that section of the training and I'm sort of like, ugh, I start rolling my eyes. And I'm like, I made this training and I still don't want to do this right now.
Right.
When it came time to look at updating the training modules, did you start with VR? Were you looking at any other ideas for improving training and that one just sort of seemed to stick? What was that process like?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, I think it's bringing VR into it sort of came about. I went to a research meeting here at Mizzou, and there was this researcher talking from a different department, talking about all of the things they can do in virtual reality and sort of this lab they have, they call the iLab. And immediately after the talk, I went up to him and I said, "Oh, I love your research. This is really fascinating, and I think that it could be so applicable to what I do in applied behavior analysis." So we started talking about that and, sort of hit it off. Then I wrote a grant and got some funding, and we developed the simulations from there to start this training and to really test out, if we can use a virtual reality training, using sort of the BST model, but in a virtual reality simulation to see if we can get some better outcomes.
Mm-hmm. So what was that process like? Was it one where you had a pretty good sense of what you wanted the software to look like? You had a sense of what you wanted the training to look like, and you were counting on your colleagues in the other department to sort of help with how the programming would allow for that to sort of develop, give and take between the two of you?
He put kind of the onus on me to come up with scenarios. And then once I design the scenarios, then they can sort of take that storyboard and recreate it and, program that into the virtual setting. So I sort of had an idea of what I wanted to do just from previous experience with BST and training people how to do functional analyses, so on and so forth. So I had an idea of kind of what it would look like because I had some experience doing role plays with that and writing, scripts or scenarios for actors to follow in training. But, there was some give and take as far as, they wanted it to be very lifelike. They wanted the trainee to really experience and to feel like what the real world they were experiencing. And that's what, their expertise sort of lies in. And I said, okay, well, you do that and I'll do the nuts and bolts of what we want the actions to be. And it sort of just came together.
Yeah, I honestly don't think I would think of probably half the things a programmer would think about in terms of, I would like the student to do the following things, and then 50% of the time I want them to do this instead. That's it. But I know, a programmer would probably say, oh, but what color should their hair be? Or how would you like them to interact? Or what should they be doing when they're not engaged in those other responses? And things that wouldn't even come up. Because, again, I think for behavior analysts, we want it to look like this. We want it to be somewhat quick and repetitive so that you can get to mastery. Some of those other pieces might not even have come into the storyboards.
Right, exactly. And, they were concerned about eye contact, for example, the participant and the virtual avatar, when would they make eye contact and how often might they make eye contact? And, we don't think about that necessarily as behavior analysts, although there are programs. We should, yeah. And there are programs to train eye contact, and early intervention. But, I was just kind of going with, okay, what's the antecedent, the behavior and consequences we're looking for, and put that in. And it definitely was much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one thing I remember about it, I did it as well, is I loved that he was like tapping his hands, the avatar, tapping his feet, getting out of his chair. Like he was like being a real dude, not just like kind of like just lifelessly sitting in the chair waiting for something to happen. Yeah, that would be creepy.
Yeah, and we did a parents focus group at the Thompson Center to talk to parents of kids with autism, some of the typical behaviors that they saw, and then also what behaviors they would like for us to address and program into the simulation. And then we also took the criteria from the DSM and tried to make, include all those traits and make it, as lifelike as possible.
You chose to do functional communication training, at least in the module that you shared with us. Was that the only module, or were you making other modules?
That's the pilot and the sort of proof of concept simulation we have right now is functional communication training. Mm-hmm. We do have some other ones in the works, but that's top secret. So,
what is it?
Is there an underwater level? Is what I want to know.
No, there's a at McDonald's or in the Target parking lot level. That's what we're going. That's what we're going for next, hopefully. But no, I think we stuck to functional communication training because that's really the go-to intervention for most people, and been so effective. Especially with the decreasing severe problem behavior, which is sort of the idea of the virtual training, is to be in a dangerous situation where there could be severe problem behavior. So, let's teach FCT.
Mm-hmm. And especially for your new students,
right?
They're going to forget everything they know. They're going to remember a lot more when it's, let's sit and do a preference assessment, and you have a compliant young child, when it's, oh, this student is getting upset because you failed to notice that they're handing you a card that is the only thing really maintaining low levels of challenging behavior. That's when they're going to probably panic the most.
Right. Yeah. You missed that one FCR, that one successful FCR, and all of a sudden, it's put on extinction, and then you might see some problem behavior. So, we want to make sure they are honoring all of those FCRs. They're just providing the right consequences so that doesn't happen.
Right. And I do love that was, I think, really displayed in the virtual reality world, because I remember, I was doing it and the kid, threw the card at me because I wasn't, grabbing it. And then he, threw it at me, and then I think he went and, hit the wall, or, did he, flip the table over, or, do something over at the table? So, I mean, that's what would, not to that extreme, but maybe to that extreme, right, when you're not honoring someone's language.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And really, with FCT, that's kind of the nuts and bolts of teaching how to provide differential reinforcement. Make sure you're putting problem behavior on extinction, and make sure you're reinforcing the appropriate behavior. And then also, an important part of that is making sure the EO is in place, establishing operations, making sure that's in place. And once you get kind of those nuts and bolts, you can train those. I think that people start to understand behavior and how to, work more with individuals with problem behavior.
Yeah, they're sort of, the way you're describing them, Casey, those are sort of the cusps, when you get down to it. I'm sorry, Diana, I stole your idea. I'll edit mine out. You say it. You say it.
Continue.
Because, those ideas of EOs, those ideas of differential reinforcement, the ideas of extinction, the ideas of paying attention to small communication bids. If you can get those, if you can master those, then you have a lot of the tools in the arsenal for future treatment packages.
Right, exactly.
And you can teach FCT sort of in the abstract and in this virtual world like you're establishing here, and then ideally see generalization to multiple types of functional communication responses outside of that environment too.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
So, Casey, I'm going to give you the very fun job of taking this very awesome technology and describing it with words through audio, what it actually would be like. So, paint a mind picture for the listeners who unfortunately cannot actually see how cool this really is, but just sort of describe it, which I'm sure is it's not going to be as close to the real thing, but as best you can.
Okay, so what we did is we recreated a severe behavior clinic room at the Thompson Center. You put the goggles on, and it's important to point out this is immersive virtual reality. So virtual reality is sometimes talked about in different ways, from a simple 3D rendering on a computer screen where you're not necessarily immersed in it, but this is immersive virtual reality where you put the goggles on. You're in the severe behavior clinic room, and there's, the typical table and chairs, maybe a two-way mirror, and then there's an individual in there who is engaging in problem behavior. So now your task is to, ignore the problem behavior and make sure that you reinforce any appropriate communication responses that individual has. And then also, if anyone has had experience with functional communication training, putting that EO in place is really important. So if you're training someone or if you're using functional communication training to teach a response to get attention, then, it's important to ignore that individual or remove the attention or ignore that individual until they come up and appropriately request attention. So you're in the virtual room, severe behavior clinic room, and the kiddo's walking around engaging problem behavior. Might come up to you and try and swipe at you, which you should move but not provide attention. then that individual might also come up to you and say, I want to play, please. And that's at that point, you'd give them attention. And, there are ways you can interact with that individual in the virtual reality. We have a program so you can, grab their hands and sort of dance around with them. And so that's sort of the experience. I'm not sure, did that do it justice? You guys have experienced it.
Yeah, but one thing I can't remember is, are you holding something?
The Oculus Go, I think that I had for the demonstration unit that you guys saw, we didn't have controllers.
Okay.
But in our research and in our training, we have handheld controllers where, you can reach out and grab the individual's hand or arm or, turn them and prompt them in different ways.
Right. I couldn't remember because I remember walking through the Stranger Things living room and moving my hands so wildly that I knocked over a cup, but I couldn't remember if there's anything in my hand.
Yeah. So if you do have the actual virtual training and what our participants did, they do have handheld controllers. And they can interact in the environment to the degree we allow them, I guess.
Right. Okay. So how do your participants like it? Right?
It's mixed responses. Some people think it's really, really cool, really interesting. Other people kind of maybe got bored with it after a while. Keep in mind, we were running research sessions, so we're running these sessions to stability, and that can sometimes be a drag for participants. Yeah, but for the most part, people love it. They love the technology. They find it pretty interesting, and it feels real. You react as if you are actually in the room with a child that might be coming at you.
I found that to be very true in the demo you gave us, because even though the graphical fidelity was not close to what a real child would look like, it had that kind of Pixar movie quality, older Pixar movie quality to it.
Yep.
It was surprising how much, when the little boy was handing me the card, I wanted to give him, dance or pat him on the head when he was getting upset, how much I was sort of I got to make sure I keep my distance.
Reinforce that behavior, didn't you?
No, I didn't want him to kick me, even though he wasn't real and couldn't kick me. And it was so surprising how, I don't want to say real it feels, but how our responses generalize to that environment, even though it is a simulation of real life. And it's I don't want to say rudimentary, certainly not close to what real life looks like.
Yeah, definitely. The graphics, it's not video quality graphics, although that's a possibility and is a direction we're going. But it's definitely, like you said, Pixar, maybe a little bit choppy video game type graphics. But yeah, that's, our behavior does generalize to that setting and to the point that you're dodging if someone's swinging at you.
So in terms of the research itself, it sounds like you're doing, you have multiple participants who are working on the training module. Can you talk more about the research itself, how that's going, or any bumps that you ran into, or interesting results that have come out already?
Yeah, there were 15 participants that we've taken through the virtual training. About 3/4 of them did training in FCT to teach them how to do FCT for attention. And then another 1/4 of them did the training for FCT to provide escape. And one thing that, since this is sort of a new technology, I really wanted to examine it piece by piece. So we use behavioral skills training, but I wanted to do a sort of a component analysis behavioral skills training in the virtual reality setting to see, if there was one component that they might actually master the skill before we actually get into a lot of rehearsal and feedback. And so I did a component analysis of behavioral skills training in the virtual reality setting. And so 15 participants. We had escape scenarios and attention scenarios. The pilot data looked great.
That's always good to hear.
It's something that sometimes, research can kind of take a crazy train off the tracks and, oh no, let's start over. What do we do? People really started catching on to and performing well in the simulation. I think the responses we're measuring were particularly if they were correctly following functional communication training.
In terms of when you're looking at BST in the virtual world, how did you go about so you were or you were not giving feedback at this point with the component analysis?
So we started we started with just basic instructions. And we gave them a short PowerPoint, and then we also gave them a FCT protocol on paper. And then we put them in the virtual reality setting and said, okay, go, see what you can do. And that sort of served as our baseline phase, just instructions only. And then from there, we went on to modeling. If they, didn't hit mastery with just instructions only, and then we would model the correct responses throughout the virtual reality sessions, and then we would test them after that.
Okay.
So then there was like a therapist in the virtual reality session, or were you there too? I think that's confusing me.
So the participant could observe researcher doing the virtual reality, so they could see the researcher, but they could also see on a screen what the researcher was doing in the room.
Okay, that makes
the phone a friend condition.
Yep.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I was like, do they have like the VR and there's like a programmed like another fake person doing it? But now that makes a lot more sense.
Can they do?
No,
but
that's also another direction that we're pretty close to.
Yeah,
they can do that, right? Where you have someone else, like it's like a multiplayer VR. Can't they? Because they know where you are in the computer, they know from the sensors.
They know. You can make it look like Clippy. Just like pop up in the corner. Seems like you're having some trouble.
I'm sure they can do Clippy, but
no one wants Clippy.
So that's called gamification in the virtual reality parlance, if you will, and that's sort of automated feedback. And that's something that, we didn't include in this virtual reality training, but we hope to program so that the feedback can be automated as opposed to having an expert, observe you and then give you feedback after you complete a session.
That would be really cool.
And then in the current study, that's what the feedback, if a participant needed to get to the feedback stage after the modeling, was that what it was? It was just someone standing next to them, telling them what to do?
Yep. Yeah, so in that phase where we did sort of the feedback, we gave them feedback after the session. So we didn't actually have them right there giving them feedback immediately, which I know is more effective, but we sort of waited until they had gone through the whole session because we didn't want to interrupt the virtual reality. They're in the middle of the simulation, basically, the simulation from running.
That might be kind of weird, if they're in the middle of the virtual world and they're hearing a weird disembodied voice that they know is real and next to them, but is not, they can't see.
You're doing a good job.
This is wrong, all wrong, try harder.
Yeah. So the feedback, we would score or take the data on their correct responses and incorrect responses, and then the feedback would be based on those correct and incorrect responses. And what's interesting, and I think this is something that's probably kind of the most exciting thing that I saw, was about half of the participants were performing at mastery levels in the modeling phase. So we didn't have to actually get to giving them feedback. They, got it. They got the FCT just from the instructions and watching someone do it. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Were these new trainees at the center?
Yeah, so they were all college students. We call them preclinical behavior analysts.
Okay.
And they were either enrolled or about to take an ABA course or interested in ABA and wanted to, have that as like a career move. So, but none of them had taken any ABA classes or had worked in sort of a clinical setting with kids using ABA.
Mm.
But one might think that the motivation to do well was already pretty high.
Right, yeah. I think it was. You also have people watching you in the virtual reality simulation. So the motivation's high. And, one thing that I think sort of got maybe some participants frustrated was that we couldn't give them feedback until the feedback phase.
Right.
And so, they would be like, just tell me what I'm doing wrong. And just keep do your best, type of
Everybody hates that.
In the name of science.
Yeah, right.
So it sounds like those initial pilot results have been really, really, really promising. And that's leading you on to sort of phase 2, 3, 4, it sounds like?
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that we didn't do that I'd really like to do is get a measure of generalization and put those students, they don't have certification, so we can't put them in the clinic working hands-on with kiddos yet. So I think, our first step will be to have an actor role play with them in a live setting and see if it generalizes to that actor.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually
a child actor?
Yes. Yeah, well, we'll say younger because the actor in the simulation's probably about a teenage.
Sure. I was just joking.
Yeah.
I thought you were about to volunteer.
I'll do it. Yeah. I'll do it.
That seems like a logical next step. Yeah, to include.
Yeah, that's the next phase. And so writing, currently in the fundraising portion of that, writing grants to support that research.
So Casey, looking at the VR landscape and the training landscape, kind of blue sky it, where, as long as the results continue to come out well and promising, where do you see the training technology going from here? Again, if everything continues to go well, and you get good, if not better results than you do from just regular BST with a participant in the training room.
Yeah, well, so in other fields, they're already using virtual reality. So medical fields are using virtual reality to teach doctors how to do surgery, for example. And then, the military is actually using virtual reality for training simulations. So other fields are really taking advantage of the technology, even actually education. So teachers and classroom teaching, there's some research on using virtual reality. And that's all been very promising. They're getting great results. So as far as, applying virtual reality to training behavior analytics skills, I think that, this could be something that most clinics would want to use, most companies would want to use, most schools would want to use. And even, and more importantly to me, is in the college setting, training master's students and training the new wave of RBTs and BCBAs.
Mm-hmm. Have you thought more about, for the next phase or after you've done the generalization phase, looking at updating the program to add more of the kind of gamification that you mentioned earlier, like level system or
badges,
points? Yeah, badges for, you get an achievement because you set up an EO 3 times correctly in a row or anything like that.
Rob loves achievements.
Yeah. One of the goals of this, right, is to make it as efficient and accessible as possible. And so that accessibility piece is, a large part of gamification. If we can program some of those consequences in and, earning points for, correct action and then ways to monitor that, then we can ship out the headsets and the goggles to distance settings, rural settings, and do training sort of through that model. That's the next logical step as far as gamification and increasing accessibility of this virtual reality training goes. It's actually a lot closer than we think.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that because it sounds so exciting. And it's a kind of technology you're like, this seems doable. And then you hear it is, the other fields are using it. Okay, fine, then let's get it. We need it right now. Why can't we have it yesterday kind of thing?
Yeah, right. And with how fast VR technology is advancing, it's pretty affordable now to get a standalone unit that you can have controls and can monitor your body position, and then also probably provide you with some feedback, given that it can monitor your position and what you're doing. So
don't tell Rob that.
Those standalone.
I already know how much they cost, Jake. I priced them. You can't get I know there's one now. It's the follow up to the Go, the Oculus Quest. That's the standalone headset, and that's only $400, but they are sold out because I think a lot of people hear $400 and I don't need a computer.
Right.
That's a pretty good seller. I think that's the mass market appeal. Like maybe $300. I think you get almost everyone buying at least one for per household kind of. But
I think you need one for every room at that price point, right?
But that's an interesting point you bring up, Rob. One in every household. So something I'd really like to do with this is do parent training, and make this accessible to parents in some programs, some scenarios that would help parents, because that really is a large service industry that needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. Now, in your work with the programming department, have there been any technological barriers that you foresee, or does it really seem as simple as I just need to make sure that they understand what it is I'm asking and it magically appears on the headset, in a week or however long it takes to program?
Well, the collaborators I'm working with right now, they're excellent programmers. I'm not sure, I can't speak for all programmers, and definitely not my area of expertise. But the ones I'm working with right now have just been excellent. I tell them, I want it to look like this or do X, Y, and Z, and, they can do it. And also, I think that it's really exciting to see virtual reality companies like Oculus, HTC Vive. They are putting money into these programs for people to create these simulations so that there can be more content to put on the devices, because then people will use them more. Mm-hmm. So it's really something that, the industry wants and is looking for is, let's program a lot. There's not a lot of challenges, it seems like, and so the sky's the limit, as far as the simulations we can program.
Neat.
I know. I almost want to see if we could get some more BCBAs who are programmers, or programmers who want to learn some of the basics of being BCBAs to sort of speed up or minimize any potential language barrier that might be in terms of what are we asking for and what would it look like in the virtual world. But it almost sounds like that hasn't even been an issue in terms of getting what you've wanted. Yeah, at least Casey, for you and your group. There might be some, for every one super success, there might be a bunch of teams who just can't seem to get their programmers to understand what they're talking about, or they're not explaining it well enough.
Well, one of the cool things about this research and this collaboration is actually working with the programmers and teaching them what we do. And now, I would pull a programmer and I'd almost have them be working with a kid because they're so adept at FCT. Unfortunately, the skill transfer hasn't happened the other way around, and that is I'm not programming.
Yeah.
This is kind of unfortunate, but, it's been a really cool collaboration, to teach other people how behavior works, them get to see sort of how to implement that and be part of that application.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Well, it was so exciting to hear all about your work, Casey. I'm glad that the results have been so promising that you're going to be continuing on with it. And hopefully when we get the chance to run into you again, we'll get a chance to play around maybe a little bit more in the virtual space. Is that something we can ask for maybe?
Yeah, definitely. We've upgraded the demo, so now you can have a little bit more control in the environment and move around. So that's pretty fun for people to see. Yeah, I guess I'll probably be seeing you guys at the Thompson Center conference this fall.
In September, the last weekend in September.
Woohoo.
That's right.
Cool.
Be there.
Beautiful. Well, Casey, is there, if folks have questions about VR or the VR development and training process, is there a contact information that you wouldn't mind sharing for listeners?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, my email, my university email is claycj@health.missouri.edu, or, just Google Casey Clay and Mizzou, University of Missouri, and it should pop up with my contact information.
Excellent.
And your smiling face.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
Casey, thank you so very much for being on the show. We really enjoyed talking with you and hearing all about your work.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to talk to you guys and get to joke around a little bit.
Super fun.
And welcome back to all of our listeners. And that brings us to the end of our episode on virtual reality training. We hope you all, I know, it's time to go. We hope you all had a great time. I know I certainly did. I always enjoy talking about technology, and I always enjoy talking about it with people who are working on sort of the forefront of how technology, I think, is being used in our field for training, cool. Right? Mm-hmm. Pretty awesome. Before we go, though, I want to make sure everyone gets that second secret code word, and it is peach. P-E-A-C-H. Peach, the fruit, the symbol of Georgia.
Whenever I think of peach, I think of peach air freshener because of college where my bathroom was in location to the living room. It just always smelled like peach flavored.
Dinah made some peach milkshakes. They were very good.
I just had one.
I wish I had another one.
It was good.
It's all gone.
We don't have any more. Peach. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for listening. A very, very big thanks to Dr. Berglind Sveinbjornsdottir and to Dr. Casey Clay for being on the show. If you enjoyed the show, why not leave us a review or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're interested, you can certainly find us on social media. We're on Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, and on YouTube as ABA Inside Track. You can visit our website at abainsidetrack.com to apply for continuing education credits or to find links to all of our articles. Those are also in our episode show notes. And you can always feel free to email us with any corrections, any thoughts, or any ideas for future episodes at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, and Diana. For all of you out there, we'll be back next week with another episode. But until then, keep responding. Bye.